Aloha, and you're watching Dante's Boxing Nation.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So Adrian the Problem Broner is finally about to make his comeback this May 3rd on the Mayweather versus Marcos Maidana undercard. Man, who would have even thought a year ago we would be talking about Adrian Broner making his comeback? Well, nevertheless, Adrian Broner, he is making his comeback, and he's doing it against Carlos Molina. Now, usually, there wouldn't be a big fuss about a fight like this. You know, I mean, of course, there's a little interest seeing how Adrian Broner bounces back from his first defeat. But other than that, opponent-wise, it's not that much of an intriguing matchup, right? But for me, because I have a little bit of a small personal connection, or at least a personal experience with the Molina brothers and the gang, that makes this fight very intriguing for me. Let me explain why. And matter of fact, before I explain why, let me go ahead and give out a verbal disclaimer right now. For the sensitive people, I want to let you guys know right now that in this video, I am going to talk about race, okay? So if you're not interested in hearing about it, please stop the video right now and go watch another video, all right? You've already been warned. Now let's go ahead and get into it. You see, I've been living out here in Las Vegas, Nevada for about 5 years now. Before that, I was living in Long Beach, California. That's where I was born and raised. Now, right before I moved out here to Vegas, we moved to the city of Lakewood, which was right next to the city of Hawaiian Gardens, all right? Now, this was actually around the time when I was still training, and my son, my older son, Genesis Williams, he was training. So the best gym and the closest gym to us at the time was the Hawaiian Gardens gym. Now, keep in mind, the Hawaiian Gardens gym is predominantly all Mexican. You know, the entire city, etc. Okay, now also you need to keep in mind that unfortunately the city of Hawaiian Gardens was a very segregated city. A lot of the Mexicans, unfortunately, were very racist towards blacks. And in the next couple of minutes, you guys are going to understand exactly what I mean when I share with you guys what I experienced at this gym and what I heard at this gym. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Now, understand this, guys. This is a very highly touted gym. It is a very popular gym in the city of Hawaiian Gardens. Matter of fact, it's so popular that U.S. Olympian Abner Mares, this is where he trained. Okay, this was his home gym. Now, for those of you guys who don't know this, Carlos Molina, he actually has two younger brothers that are twins, Oscar Molina and Javier Molina. Matter of fact, both of them went to the Olympics. Javier Molina, he went to the Olympics for the U.S., and Oscar Molina, he represented the Olympics for Mexico, okay? And also you have David Estrada, another U.S. Olympian who also used to train out of this Hawaiian Gardens gym. Now, some of you guys who are subscribed to me, you may recall when I did a video basically talking about the statements that Abner Mares made before a fight when he did an interview. In that interview, Abner Mares, he basically volunteered information that I think he probably should have kept to himself. But what he basically said is, he grew up in the mean streets of Hawaiian Gardens, and, it was really rough. You had to be tough growing up there. And this is when Abner Mares dropped the bomb by basically admitting that he would be involved in riots, black versus brown. And then he went even further by saying that he would always be right in the middle of it, right? So keep in mind, like I said, this is Abner Mares, this is Hawaiian Gardens. Now let's fast forward to another occasion where I'm actually at the gym training, at the Hawaiian Gardens gym, right? My son is training over there as well. Now, on this day, Javier Molina is there training, right? He was there quite often. Javier and his brother Oscar, they were there a lot. I never really seen Carlos Molina training over there. I just seen mainly Oscar and Javier. But anyway, they were training, and after Javier trains, he's talking to my coach Nava, and Javier, they're speaking in Spanish. And I remember as I was training or whatever, Nava, he looks at me and he says, and he tells them, he said, okay, guys, we got to stop speaking in Spanish because it's unfair. Dante, he doesn't know what we're saying, and, et cetera, saying stuff like that, right? So then Nava turns back around to me, and he basically translates what Javier was basically saying. And Nava said, Javier, and Javier's standing right here. He's looking at me and everything. Nava, he basically says that, Javier was just explaining that he went to a tournament, and it was really no good fighters there. Just a bunch of, a couple black kids were there, right? And I remember just kind of, giggling. And I said to Javier, because Javier, he already had this funny look on his face as Nava was, explaining this to me. He had this look on his face like, why are you even telling him what we're talking about, right? So this is when I said to Javier, so you're telling me there were no good fighters at this tournament? Just a couple of black kids were there. Do you know that's like saying I went to the park to go play basketball, but I left because it was no good kids to play up there. It was just a bunch of black kids up there playing basketball, right? Or if a black person, went and said, you know what, I want to go play soccer, right? And you go to the football field or you go to the park, and all you see is Mexicans playing soccer, and you say, well, I didn't want to play because, there was no good soccer players there. It was just a bunch of Mexican kids playing soccer, right? So this is basically what I had told Javier. And he didn't really say anything. He kind of looked at me, and then Nava jumped in and he changed the subject, and then we went back to training, okay? So that was one situation right there. So it's already obvious the point that Javier Molina was making, right? He was basically suggesting that the Mexican fighter is so superior towards the black fighter that when they face each other, it's not even a contest. Now, listen, I want people to understand this. There is nothing wrong with having a whole lot of pride for your country, for your race, okay? But once that pride starts to spill over to the point to where it interferes with other races of people, and your pride somewhat becomes another person's problem, that's when it could be a bit much. So Javier makes this ridiculous comment. And, another thing that I thought about later after, we had this little conversation, or this little brief conversation about this, I thought about it and I said, wait a minute. How can Javier Molina say this when he was on the U.S. Olympic team that was predominantly black? The majority of people that were on the Olympic team that Javier was on were mainly black. And you guys have to understand something. Making the Olympic team, that means you are the best fighter in the nation in that division. All right? So this is the dream team. This is the American dream team. Javier Molina was on this team. You're going to leave that team just to come home and talk about how blacks are basically not on a Mexican fighter's level? I mean, it doesn't even really make sense. So the point that I'm making is you guys kind of understand what they think about black fighters. And when I say they, I'm obviously talking about the Molina brothers. I'm talking about Abner Mares. But wait, there's one more person that I didn't mention. David Estrada. Now, David Estrada, who is an undefeated middleweight right now, he probably moved up to super middleweight. But anyway, he as well is a former U.S. Olympian who, like I said, used to train at this gym as well. Nava's telling me the story, Coach Nava, he's telling me the story why David Estrada doesn't train at that gym anymore. He basically said that Estrada had somewhat of a bad temper. And one time he got into it with one of the trainers. The trainer was a black guy. Now, before I go any further, I'm sure you guys can already tell how that argument turned out just by me starting it off that way. Basically, Dave Estrada, he went off on a black trainer, went on somewhat of a racial tirade, calling the black trainer all type of N-words and any other racial comment that he could come up with. He called this trainer that, right? Because of this incident, David Estrada was kicked out of the gym. And like I said, keep in mind, this, outside of all of these racial antics going on, this was a good gym. Especially if you're Mexican, right? This was a really good gym in Hawaiian Gardens. And David Estrada, he got kicked out of this gym. Now, what Nava would, go on to tell me is, months later, or I don't know if it was months later or weeks later, but anyway, David Estrada, he came back to the gym with his father. And his father was basically trying to, get David Estrada back in this gym. So Coach Nava is telling me that while the father is apologizing and saying that David apologizes as well, Nava said he could see David Estrada, sitting over there a little further away, and he just has this I don't care, nonchalant, like I don't apologize for nothing type of demeanor. So after Coach Nava seen David Estrada's body language, he told David Estrada's father, he's like, no, I'm sorry. You might as well just find another gym. This is not the right gym for him. Okay? So let's just look at how all of these incidents correlate. Okay? You have Abner Mares admitting that he was always involved in black against brown riots, right? Something that he obviously is proud of because he, told the media that he used to go through this. Right? Then you have the situation with Carlos Molina's younger brother, Javier Molina, who's basically suggesting that a black fighter is nowhere near the level of a Mexican fighter. And then last but not least, you have this situation with David Estrada getting kicked out of the gym for going on a racial tirade. And all of these fighters come out of the same gym. How crazy is that, guys? How crazy is that? All out of the same gym. And, going back to Carlos Molina, this is the reason why I find this fight a lot more interesting. Because now, seeing what Carlos Molina was basically born and raised to believe, right, about his race as opposed to the black race, and hearing this all your life, going through the riots, going through all of this. Now all of a sudden, you're about to be in the biggest fight of your life, and guess what? You're the underdog. Now, according to the Molina twins, how is that possible that you could ever be an underdog going against a black guy? I can't help but imagine the pressure that must be on Carlos Molina to go out and win this fight and look superior and dominant against an Adrian Broner. Because once again, what he was born and raised, being told by all of his friends, family, and whoever else, right? You see, the sport of boxing is a truth machine. Because once you get in that ring, we're going to find out the truth. Does your ideology make sense? Are you really superior to anyone? We're going to find out once you jump in that truth machine. So this is Carlos Molina's and his brother's opportunity to basically walk it like they talk it. All right? We'll see what happens. And later on down the line, I may have Carlos Molina on my show. And we're obviously going to talk about this fight and other things. So that's all I got to say about this, man. Shit comes around full circle. And, when you open your mouth, you never know what position or situation you're going to be in the future to where you may have to back up those previous words. I'm on to the next one.